Okay, well, let's get started. Welcome, everybody. Again, my name is Rhonda Harrell, and I am the IAPS consultant for the Northeast, Southeast, and the North Central. So welcome, everybody. Carmen, would you like to introduce yourself?
Good morning, everyone. I am Carmen Mills. I am the IAPS consultant for the Southwest and the Sand Hills regions. Glad to have you on the call.
And I think Jen is trying to get on, but she has the remaining regions across the state.
I'm here. Hello.
Okay, yay! Go ahead, Jen.
I'm in witness protection. See my shadow? Good morning. Good morning. Good afternoon, everybody. This is Jen Phelps. I have 5, 7, and 8. Hope you guys are well.
I do want to begin this conversation this morning by really just saying how much Jen, Carmen, and I appreciate you guys. We have really been seeing some fantastic work across the state, and we really want to encourage you guys to please, please, please start putting those highlights in the highlight reel in our monthly newsletter. I have just about begged multiple of my schools to share those things because people want some good ideas and want to know what's going off. And so please take a moment to give a shout out to yourself and share those wonderful resources that you're putting together. Today, we're going to have some March updates regarding the North Carolina Facilitated Assessment of MTSS that is for schools. It was released in February to MTSS and PBIS coordinators. Now, some of you are probably going, well, what is the FAMS? And then some of you are probably going, well, where's SAM? Well, SAM got replaced by FAM. And for those of you that are familiar with PBIS, the Tier Fidelity Inventory and SAM got married and had FAM. So they are two tools that were combined and released in February. There is a technical report. It's only 7 pages that really talks about how we went about taking these two instruments and combining them so that it was truly done with fidelity. And it was a really long process, but a very good learning process. And we have everything on the website that shows and talks about how we did that. So feel free to read that technical report. Here, as you can see, is the URL to the FAM website. I highly encourage each one of you, if you have not done so yet, I've got to hand it to Susan Laney, who helped put this website together. It is so user-friendly. There's not a bunch of information where it's so overwhelming that it really gives you the basics of what the FAM is, an overview, FAQs. So anything you want to know, all you have to do is go right here to this website. I have spent time going through it, and it did not take me long at all. And I do encourage you to watch a couple of the video clips that are also attached. So you can either use what's on the left nav, or you can just click on what's on the screen. And you can print down reports and stuff as well. So I highly encourage you to do that. We also have the URL here for the web application, and we'll talk more about the web application in just a few minutes. So our discussion points for today, we really want you to understand what facilitated means. We've already had several questions about that. Who's going to facilitate this? The logistics around how do I actually get this administrated or facilitated, and the scoring of the FAM, about the web application itself. So these are 3 main things that we will be discussing today. So the FAM. It is recommended that you complete this assessment between April and June of every school year. It is to be utilized to measure how you're working towards full implementation of MTSS. Now, some of you, most of you in our regions have just really gotten started this year. So Do not go, oh my gosh, this is a report card, because it is by no means a report card. It is only a tool to assist you in identifying and prioritizing your next steps of how you're going to be implementing this. So, or implementing MTSS. So you will be using a scoring, which I think Jen or Carmen will talk about later. So you're probably, it's on a scale. And if you have to give yourself a 0 in one of those areas that you are measuring, that's okay, because again, this is just your first year. So again, between April and June, you're going to be using this to help measure your progress as you implement MTSS and putting systems and practices in place. And it's also going to help you in deciding what's going to be the next steps in regard to the professional development and coaching that's going to be necessary for your staff. So you go, well, how do we get this done? Well, who is going to do this? Because, you know, we're charters and we may be small, we may be big, but we really don't have a central office that can do this. So it could be someone not on your team, or it could be that several of the charters get together and have a neutral party that can help facilitate and guide the questions as the team scores. So there's many different ways that you can get this facilitated and can be done. Carmen or Jen, any other further insight on what I just talked about?
As Rhonda mentioned, we are going to be recording this particular webinar. And so if you do have someone that you'd like to help and support facilitation of the FAMS, this might be a great way to kind of help to provide some insight around that. So that's just one thing to think about as well.
And being that some of the facilities are small, it might be hard to find someone to do that for you. So with the charters, I do feel like it would be okay for the MTSS coordinators to do the facilitation, but really ask some really good guiding questions as you problem solve and look at artifacts. To make sure you're really, as a team, being honest about what you feel is or is not in place within your facilities. If you haven't used any of those tools, you're actually fine and will probably be a little less confused. Because I think sometimes people who have done one or the other or all three might put too much thought into it. Just know that this is now a truly integrated tool. So there is the SAM assessment or instrument, and then you have the tiered fidelity inventory, which we used in the behavior world, and they are now just truly integrated tools. So you're not doing two different ones, you're just doing one. So try really hard not to overthink it. There are 41, I think it was 41 items, it was either 41 or, yeah, 41 items, and each item, which I really love, is on one page. So it's not so overwhelming, and it's broke down very easily for you to see, and also has places for resources that you can look at as well.
So prior to administration, what we've done is we've provided some tools to you that are definitely going to be helpful as you're thinking about the FAM. One of the things that you'll note on the website is that we have a section that's completely around administration guidelines. And so if you click on the website, you'll see that there is an opportunity to look at what you do prior to the assessment, what you do during the assessment, and what you do after you've actually completed the SAM. Jen and I are going to spend some time now just kind of getting you acclimated to what you might do prior, during, and after the assessment. We also have created an infographic. Many of you have already seen this. It's also in our webinar that gives you a little bit more information. So one of the things that I would suggest prior to the actual administration of the FAM is that you review this particular infographic. All of the check marks actually lead to something. So here you'll see this gets you right back to the FAMS website. If you want to see an actual copy of the FAM in PDF format, here we can do that. There's a FAM FAQ. A summary of changes, and a TFI crosswalk to the FAM. So prior to administration, it might be really helpful to utilize this tool as well as the website to kind of acclimate yourself to what the FAM actually is. One of the other things that I also recommend is that prior to the administration, anyone who's facilitating the SAM reviews all of the questions and has a really good working knowledge of what the FAMS is, including the language, those pieces of evidence and different things. And so I'll show you here what that actually looks like. In our website, you can see that we provide a PDF version of this. It gives you the rationale and the history, along with all of the questions. So as Rhonda mentioned, in our PDF format, you can see here's all the questions along with the scoring criteria. And so you want to familiarize yourself as the facilitator prior to the administration with all of these items. So here's number 2. The question is, a leadership team is established that includes 5 to 7 members that have cross-disciplinary representation and is responsible for facilitating MTSS. As a facilitator, you may read the question during the meeting and then ask people to kind of identify where they think they are or where you think you are as a school level team. So whether you're not implementing, emerging, operationalizing, optimizing, and it gives you the criteria for each one of those. In addition to that, you'll see here that it also allows you to see some related notes to provide some clarity around each item. So here, some clarity is provided around what it means to think about the leadership team, what cross-disciplinary representation is, and then who's responsible for facilitating MTSS implementation. In addition, you'll see here some of those supporting evidences, and you're not asking people to necessarily show you every single thing, but you know that these things are in place if you have some of these pieces of evidence. So you might see the leadership team roster and roles, the team meeting agenda and minutes, or the leadership team professional participation in professional learning opportunities. So I just wanted to show you that as a way to kind of get you acclimated before you actually start facilitation. The other thing that we highly recommend is that you send this PDF form to anyone on your leadership team that's going to be participating in the assessment so that they too are acclimated and familiar with the language. What this will do is reduce the amount of time that you spend in the actual meeting because they've had an opportunity to see the information and provide, and you've had an opportunity to maybe hopefully get them to have some clarity around that as well. So what we suggest is that maybe a week or 2 before you administer the FAM, you give it to all of your leadership team members to take a quick look at so that they're familiar with that, so that when you come into the meeting, you can just be taking consensus in terms of scoring. Any questions about that?
Sean, you asked specifically about how to gain access to the Google site. That hyperlink on this slide, the FAM-S, is a hyperlink, so that goes straight to this Google site. And again, we will send this out, this recording out, and the PowerPoint, and so it has all the hyperlinks in that. Okay, so this is the actual FAM-S application. And so I wanted to show you a couple different pieces that are going to be really important. And in our 1-hour opportunity to share this with you, it's a lot of information. So, and we recognize that. That's why you also have Cohort 5 consultants to support you with this. So you know how to get in touch with this because that's why you're here, right? So on this slide, I'm actually going to come down a little bit, and we're actually going to, I'm going to review the information, but we're actually going to start with that third bullet about NCID. Before I get too ahead of myself, the FAM-S is a web application, and so it is a web-based tool utilized to administer the FAM-S. So we've just showed you a lot of resources, including that PDF of the FAM, of the actual tool, with the items and the rubric and some ideas for evidences. I highly recommend you print off at least 1 copy for you if you are the facilitator, for your team, so that people can look at it. Share that document with your people so that whenever consensus is obtained for the score for each item, whether that's circled on a piece of paper or what have you, someone has that document or those answers and then you would go into the FAMS application, and one person will enter the scores into the web app. And so in order to get to that web app, that you have to have an NCID. And so, yeah, thank you. You needed an NCID to enter your scores into the SAM. You might have needed, or you needed an NCID for the data management system if you may have been a PBIS person. Counselors have NCIDs or test administrators have NCIDs, administrators have NCIDs. So you or someone on your staff should already have one. If you do not, this is the way to get an NCID, obtaining an NCID. What I want to encourage and really strongly suggest is not even the right word. I'm telling you to utilize your person on your staff. There's someone in your building that's responsible for assigning NCIDs to school staff. And typically we recommend that 2 people have access to the FAM web app. So you might have somebody that already has one, maybe an administrator, and then whoever is going to facilitate the FAMS. And you may already have that person in place. Your MTSS coordinator could be the one that has this NCID if you don't already. But then you would go through this process to log in. Basically, from my experience, the person who assigns the NCID to you will give you your NCID. Mine is very simply Jennifer _ Phelps. That's very common. So first name _ last name. And then they give you kind of a bogus password. For some reason, mine was Autumn 17. And so, but then you have to go in and update your password. It does need to be redone every 90 days. You will get an email to say, please, your password is about to expire. So you will need to keep your password current every 90 days. It is something to keep up with. Otherwise, you'll have to go back to your person and say, please reset my password, and give them candy so that they will help you do that. It can be a little bit tedious, but it is really important to keep those current.
Each school has their own NCID administrator, and then if you kind of follow through with the directions that are on that page, it'll show you how to like locate who your NCID administrator is.
Oh, and this is another cool thing. If you still have an existing account in the SAM web application, your account is still active. It transferred to the FAMS. And that little button right there says click here to see if you have an active account. And you can type into that little gray box. And Carmen's gonna do hers. You just type in your email address and hit enter. And it will say, do you have an account? Yes. And your username is, in her case, is Carmen.Mills. And that's her username for the FAMS account. Yay. So if you're not sure, if you have an active account, you can always use that hyperlink, that little highlighted check here to see if you have an active account. And that's really kind of a cool tool that Susan Laney has done for us. And then Carmen has also put the hyperlink in. If you want to check that now, you can always go in there and see if that works for you. To create an account in the web application, we're going to walk you through that. There's a document here to go into the FAMS, and you would get the opening page, and it says, do I have an NCID? And it would say yes or no, and hopefully you would go and say yes. If you don't, you have to get your NCID first, but you would say, yes, I have an NCID, and you would put in your username and password. And the first time you have to check the little box that says, I agree to the terms of use. And then you hit enter. And then it's going to ask you for your user role and some demographics, like your name and your role at your school and things like that. It's very, 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 very important for you to say, does that scroll, Carmen, or whoever's driving? Go down a little bit on that document. There it is. it's very, very important for you to mark one of those boxes that says Charter MTSS Staff Administrator or Charter MTSS Staff. That will help us keep you guys in our Cohort 5 folder. If you click something else like school, that's okay, but it would be really helpful for us to keep you guys organized in Charter MTSS Staff or Administrator, and then we can kind of find you faster. But we can find you regardless. You put your first name, your last name, the date is auto-populated, your email, verify your email. Phone number is just an easy way for us to get in touch with you if something comes up and you have a question. And then if there's any kind of a note to an administrator, and then you subscribe. And that comes to all of us so that we can approve your account and say, yes, you're legit. And then you will then have access to the SAM application. But it is important that you do this to gain access before you can actually get in and put your scores in and get some data from this FAMS tool. Are there any questions? This is a lot of information. So NCID is required. You can check to see if your account is active if you've done this before. And then you must create an account in the web application before you can submit anything. I wish there was a way to do thumbs up. But, okay, so during the administration, another tip would be that, again, whoever is your team should have access to the FAMS tool, and then you can come together to gain consensus on those items so that they can, it's almost like a homework assignment. Let's look over this and then come together. Oh, there's a thumbs up, Sean, thank you. So you can come together, and so if there's any discrepancy between scores like 0s and 1s or 1s and 2s or 2s and 3s, that if you have a team of 5 people, that we can come to consensus on our score. And then the time together would be kind of figuring out what our reasoning is or what our understanding is of our score, so we can say our score is a 2 and we have evidence to identify this when you come back together. And then that one person, the facilitator, would be able to put those scores in the web application for the record. I hope that makes sense as well. I've got my login screen pulled up. I have an NCID account. There's my username and password, and I've already, the first time you have to check this box, but I'm just gonna do it for kicks for y'all. I log into the FAMS, and this gives us the rationale and history and recommended use, and then I start the FAMS. Now, just because I'm gonna pick on Lake Laura, I don't know why, I've just got y'all in my brain today for some reason. A little love out to them. It says select the LEA or charter school, and I'll cancel this, don't worry. And then you also need to select your school, and obviously you guys have one school per LEA, so that's that. Your district facilitator, I'm just gonna put my name in here today just so I also know this is a test. And your team members present are gonna be team member 1, 2, 3, whoever's available. You put their names for whoever's available to do that administration. And then save changes and go on to the next page. Or if you get stopped for some reason, oh, we barely got started and you have a fire drill, you can always just save changes and then come back and continue. And so this is going to take you through one item at a time. And so the first item is the principal is actively involved in and facilitates MTSS implementation. You'll also see over here to the left, it has leadership is the first domain, and it has leadership item 1 through 6 right here. So if you know that you need to get to leadership item 3, I can click on leadership item 3, and that's the one I'm going directly to. So you've got a couple ways to navigate the domains, the items, and your scoring. So for a linked teaming structure exists that facilitates the implementation of a multi-tiered system of support. Uh-oh, my little people are blocking my view. For attendance, behavior, social, emotional, and academic support. And it says no linked teaming structure exists. A linked teaming structure exists that demonstrates one of the following, 2 to 3 of the following, or all of the following. And it's identifying these 4 components right here. Team meets regularly and have regular meeting format, agenda, minutes, defined roles. Team members have expertise in the area being problem solved, administrative authority, knowledge of the students, and knowledge of school operations. Team members include family, community, multi-agency support when appropriate, district or school contact person with access to external support agencies and resources for planning and implementing non-school based interventions. And so I'm going to rate this that they have 2 to 3 of the following and click this item right here. Okay, whoops, a little glitchy there. And then I can add any notes that we have, meeting minutes, etc. Okay. And so you can document your evidence, you can document whatever you would like to help you remember what pieces that you're navigating or that you're using to support that item. And again, save changes or go on to the next page. You would go all the way through to the end. I'm trying to remember if there was a completed piece. Once you get to the last item, you just save changes. It does have an error button up here. So if you have a place where there is not a score, or you're in an item and it doesn't have a score, then it would ask you to do that. I'm pretty sure that you can save it in the middle and come back, if I remember correctly. The idea here too is even if you are maybe weak in a particular area and you know that, it's okay. Go through and this is a conversation that was really important to a couple of us that if you have a lot of zeros, that's okay, because that's what you're working on. And we're really working on our communication and collaboration right now. And that's what we're really focusing on for this upcoming year or this upcoming semester. And then that's okay. This is the area that we're going to be working on, the communication collaboration. And so you know that you're going to be working in this domain. That's fine. So that's where your focus is. Or if you're still working on leadership, or if you're still working on building infrastructure, that's okay. There was a time where these scores were being used for recognition, and so the scores were really inflated, and we're not using these scores for goals for recognition anymore. And the idea is that you're implementing well and that you have these pieces in place to support your school and your students and your staff. And so when you have these things in place, you'll have a really solid structure, not a really high score. And that's more important than the score. So if you have a 27%, that's okay. That means that you're working on something and that you are action planning from this tool to move forward. It's not the score that's driving your implementation. It's the how you're using the tool to guide your focus in your direction. So I don't know. Anybody else want to comment, or just wanted you to kind of see what it looked like?
Jen, I do want to make just a couple of quick comments just about the website and as you're moving through it. One of the things that we ask you to think about as you're facilitating the SAM assessment. And so what you may want to do is have 1 or 2 people that have an NCID at your school so that both of you can be on the website at the same time. You may want to have someone who's facilitating the conversation, and that would probably be you as the MTSS coordinator. And then you may want to have someone who's actually recording the information as you're having the discussion. So that person might answer the questions, answer any questions about related notes, and then move down to that section and include any notes that you might think are important to record as you're moving through the assessment. So that's one thing. The second thing that I was going to mention is that you also, at the very end, as you're moving through the questions, I don't know if many of you noticed, but there is a side where each of the questions is in red. As you move through each of the questions, they'll turn green, which lets you know kind of where you are and how many questions you've answered. So as Jen said, if you have to stop for any reason, you can go back and you'll know exactly where you are because all of the questions that you've answered will already be highlighted in green. At the very end, they will have an opportunity for you to click the sign off button. And so when you do that, it's not here now because all of your items aren't green, but when you actually have all of your items in green, you've gone through the assessment, you clicked all the answers that you decided on, at the very bottom under item 41, there will be a button that says sign off. And so once you click that sign off page, that's when you will actually be able to save the assessments and view the reports. If you get an error message that says you can't see your report, 9 times out of 10, it's because you haven't selected that sign off button and kind of done that final page that says, here's the team that was completing it. Here's the MTSS person that facilitated the conversation. Once you've signed off, I will note, once you sign off, if there's any errors or corrections that you need to make, you'll have to go through our technology department because you're not able to go back once you click sign off. So I would say be really sure that these are your answers and that you're recording them correctly as you're moving through the assessment. Because again, you can't go back and redo, if you will. So once they're entered, they're in the system, you'll see some reports and you won't be able to go back into the system. I want to pause because we've given a lot of information in a little bit of time, and just ask if there's any questions before we move on. So feel free, you can unmute yourself or you can type questions in the chat to everyone so that we can see what those questions might be.
I think once you get off today, if you have time, I would just visit the FAMS website, you guys. And if you don't, flag it on your computer so you can go back to it. Like last night, I was sitting around for a little bit and I went back on it and just reviewed it for like 30 minutes. I jumped back on it this morning to see if I could find something simple, and I did. So anyway, the timeline for the administration was anytime between April and June. And it's done yearly. We had a question about what was the timeline for administration. So it is done yearly and between the months of April and June. And yes, you will have access to the recording. We will put it in our resources folder. And we can even send it out by email too.
Susan, you also asked how long does it take to administer? I would say give your team in 60 minutes to 90 minutes, and that's only if you've already reviewed it first. So like I mentioned before, if you pass out the actual assessment to your team and you ask them to review the information, so what I do is I make a copy in the PDF format. I know it's 41 pages, or I give them the Google Doc and ask them to go through and already have their answers or what they think, so that when we come to the meeting and I say, this is how I facilitate. And again, you guys can choose however you want to. But what I do is I give all of my leadership team the assessment. I ask them to go through and already have thought about what their answer is. so that when we come together, what we do is I'll say, here's question number 1. Are we operationalizing, optimizing? People will tell me their score. If there's a lot of variance in the room, then I'll say, well, let's talk about it. And then together we'll kind of come up with a consensus. And it's basically anything that you can agree on and publicly support. So, you know, I tell people in the beginning, this may be working in your classroom or in your little niche of the building, but if this is not a school-wide thing, then we may not be at the level that we think we are in terms of optimizing. And so I definitely recommend that you have people being thoughtful about it prior to actually coming to the meeting. And if you do that, 9 times out of 10, it'll take you about 60 to 90 minutes. And that also, and you know, we're going to get to this in just a second, but it also has to do with what you're going to do with those results. And so once you've completed the assessment, you can immediately access your scores and the reports. And so if you're planning some time and you want to dig in and kind of do some priority setting and some action planning as well, then I would give yourself even more time than that. But we can talk about that in just a few minutes. Any other questions? I see the chat kind
Now,
of.
Carmen, they will have access all year long to it, correct? But we just recommended that it's done between April and June,
Absolutely.
right? And don't be Right, and don't be afraid, because we had somebody say, can we do a trial run? Well, make your trial run your run, because we do expect a lot of, and this is, y'all, this is truly a self-report. It is a self-assessment. This is not a report card from us. So please do not be afraid to administer it, answer the questions, and I've said it, Jen has said it, Carmen has said it. We are anticipating a lot of 0s and 1s. Because if we got a lot of 3s from you guys, and we would probably start asking some questions. Because this is something that you're using to help towards action planning for full implementation later. And remember, that process is long. It is long.
Cindy asked the question around, will the answers save? And let me just be really clear. We know that with every app, there are glitches. I have been in the system where my answers didn't save. However, 9 times out of 10, when I've gone into the system, if I push save, it saves the answers that we have, and I can go back into the document.
And I truly recommend using the paper copy first anyway, you guys. I'm just one that likes to be able to, and then you won't have to worry about it being saved or not saved. I like to be able to write all over my document, hold it, see it, and then go in and put it all in. To me, that was just a safe practice for me.
Another question, and Jen responded to it, was, what's the main difference between the SAM and the FAM-S? And Jen's answer was just that the FAM-S is an integrated tool that includes information from the tiered fidelity inventory and the self-assessment of MTSS. So I just want to really quickly take you back to the website. If you look here, you'll see a little bit of the history in terms of the FAM-S, and it tells you a little bit about kind of where this came from. And so I just want to make note here that that's one thing that might give you a little information about the integration of the tool. The history and the rationale will do that, and that's here available for you on the MTSS website. In addition to that, there's a summary of changes from the SAM. And so if, Rachel, you're looking for a little bit more information about what the tool, what specifically is different in those tools, you can find that here as well. And it'll tell you exactly what's different in the 2 tools. So here you'll get that information. You'll see a summary of the item changes and a crosswalk right there. We also have, if you're interested in more than just knowing about the SAM and the FAMS, we also have the same thing for the TFI and the FAMS. So this will help you kind of understand where some of those items that were formerly found in the TFI are now located in the FAMS. Any questions about that? So there are tools for us on this website that will allow you to see some of those changes. We no longer have the SAM app. So if you in the past have used that app, as soon as you go into that app, you'll go straight into the FAMS. Any questions? I'm pausing one more time. All right. So we've taken some time, and I want to give you kind of to frame the conversation. We've got about 10 more minutes. We've taken some time to talk about what you need to do before. Jen shared that you really want to go ahead and request your NCID if you have not already, and request access to the FAMS app. If you are planning to administer this school with this instrument with your school leadership team, it's going to be important to access those quicker rather than later, because it may take you about 24 to 48 hours to actually be able to get into the actual app, depending on how long it takes your administrator to provide you with an NCID and how long it takes somebody from our department to respond to actually make sure that you have access to the FAMS once you've requested it. So so make sure you do that well in advance. You also want to make sure that you send out that information to your team. As you're running through it, you'll see that the FAMS webinar is very similar to the SAM. It's very easy to use. The questions are all there on one page. Any of the notes that you need are on one page. And then any of the evidences that you might want to also think about as a part of that, that item are also available to you on one page. Once you have actually completed the assessment, you want to think about how you're going to actually use this information. This is not a hoop that we ask you to jump through. We actually want this tool to be extremely helpful in helping you think about action planning and goal setting. So like I mentioned before, as soon as you select sign off, you will have access to reports in the actual website. And we'll send out more information about what those reports will look like and how you access those reports. Today, we're really just focused on the big picture of the FAMS. But once you can actually see those reports, you'll see large domain scores. So you'll see a score for leadership. You'll see a score for communication and collaboration. You'll see a score for things, all of the 6 critical components. So your 3-tiered intervention model, your data evaluation, your data problem solving, you'll see domain scores for each one of those areas. My suggestion is that once you have those reports, you kind of dig in and take a look at where your scores are and identify priorities and action items as a result. Here's the reason why I said the meeting could be more than 60 to 90 minutes. So if you want to do the assessment and then do some action planning around it, that could take a little bit of time. If you're going to do this in 2 separate meetings, which is perfectly acceptable, I would also still dedicate a pretty good chunk of time to making sure we are doing some of that action planning. There is an action planning tool that we can provide to you that just kind of allows you to think about what are your scores, what might be some priorities in that area. And so you want to, again, utilize this as a way to really identify some of those things that you'd like to continue to work on. I will note, and Rhonda and Jen have shared this, again, we do not use this as an evaluative tool. We do not, although people on our IABS team can see the scores within the app, we do not share those scores with anyone outside of our division unless you grant us permission to. So we don't use this and share this as an evaluative tool for any of you. We only want you to use this to guide your own action planning and work at the school. All right, so what's coming next? Rhonda, Jen, and I are always available to provide technical assistance to you. If you have any additional questions or if you think any additional resources will be more helpful, feel free to contact any one of us with your IABS consultant with any specific questions about administration. We are also creating within our division an updated crosswalk of the FAMS and the NC STAR. Several of our charter schools and certainly several of our schools within districts are utilizing the NC STAR as a way to do school improvement. And so we're definitely thinking about how we can crosswalk some of those indicators. And so once that is released, we'll share that with you as well. It'll also be a part of the website. And then, like I mentioned before, we will have information that we share about how you access the reports in the FAMS and then how you also utilize those at the school or, you know, at the LEA level. I know some of you have 3 schools within a school, so you might have the middle and the upper school campus. I will note that because you are a charter in one LEA, you only have access to the one FAMS application. So even if you have 2 separate schools, all of the scores will need to be combined. And we can talk about that individually if you are that school and you want to think about how you'll manage that. We have about 5 minutes and we're going to leave that open for any other comments, Rhonda and Jen, or any feedback or questions that you may have online. Cindy asked a question about our resource folder. Cohort 5 has been provided with a resource folder that has any of the materials and supports that we've provided throughout the year. And so what you'll find in that resource folder is an actual tab that has FAMS release webinar. You'll see the PowerPoint in there, and then we'll add other tools as needed to that.
Guys, really pay attention to our Cohort 5 newsletters because most of the time we have links to just about everything in our monthly newsletters as well. So like if you go, gosh, I can't remember where that resources folder is. A lot of times we have things like that listed or linked in our monthly newsletters as well.
And we'll be sure to have a whole section on the FAMS in there with all this information coming out too. So
I want to thank all of you for joining. Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, guys. We really appreciate you attending today.
see you soon.